It is Black Friday, one of the best holidays of the year, or at least it used to be. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day when people would wait in line for hours, even camp out overnight outside of a Walmart in the middle of nowhere just to get trampled by a couple dozen people in the process once the doors opened in the morning, all in hopes of being able to potentially snag some sick deal on a Samsung TV and then proceed to gift that to a loved one on Christmas. Those were the good days. That's when America was great. People were willing to die for the sale. People were willing to risk it all, and it built adversity. It was a challenge. It was like the fucking Squid Games. Not anymore. Everybody's soft now. The innovation of technology has led to the downfall of civilization, which is now where we end up, where everything is online and everything gets handed to you. Life is easy. You're soft. But it's not all that bad because HD Muscle is also online, and they are running some pretty sick deals for Black Friday. They got 25% off the entire site, 25% off. And you could also get an additional 10% off with code SEB. So we're talking 35% off now. This is going to be the biggest sale of the year, as it always is. And it's going to run until December 2nd on Monday, I believe that is. So this is Friday, or at least I hope it is. I hope this gets out by then. So you got a couple days to take advantage of these sales here. And if your wallet allows for it, or even if it doesn't, take out a line of credit for all I care. Run it up, stock up on what you need or what you want, because you're going to save more money getting it now than you would at any other point in the year. It just is what makes sense. And they're also offering free shipping on any orders that amount to over $150. They got restocks. They got some new merch drops in collaboration with Heavy D. Heavy D is a clothing brand that is owned by Dorian Hamilton, who is also one of the owners of HD Muscle. So Heavy D is essentially like, it's a real clothing brand. It's very high quality stuff. It's super nice. This is one of the crew necks right here that you'll see on the drop. It's the collegiate crew neck. I also got the fade hoodie behind me as well, and I have the fade sweatpants on right now as well. So Heavy D is super nice stuff, and I don't know if they're going to restock these items and once the sale is over, or once they sell out, which will probably be after this weekend, or at least most of the popular sizes will be, because that's just how it always works. But if you like this stuff, definitely grab it now while you can. Even if you're not able to, I would definitely recommend that you check out Heavy D as well, because the clothing, like I said, is just super nice stuff. Like I said, 25% off. Get an extra 10% off with code SEB. Always use code SEB, because why spend more when you could spend less with code SEB? And today we got Kyle Wilkes back on the podcast. Everybody loves Kyle. He's 1,000 years old as of now. I brought him out of his slumber to hop on this episode and talk about his career as a coach, his thoughts on the fitness industry and its current state, training philosophies, all that good stuff. So I think you guys are going to like this episode and get to hear him talk a little bit more than he has in previous episodes. And if you do like it, drop a comment down below. Let me know any feedback you have, any questions regarding the episode, or just if you want to drop a comment just to feed the algorithm. I like that too. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and make sure you like this video. I do appreciate it, and let's jump right into it. How long have you been coaching for?
Too long.
Too long.
I started in 2017, I guess. 2017, I think.
That's not crazy long.
Well, 2016, sorry. 2017 is like when I had my first pro and stuff.
So
Yeah.
what initially drove you into coaching? I know the whole backstory with Phil and whatnot, but
Mhm.
let's just hear it from you. Did you ever have the intention of really becoming a coach?
Absolutely not. I didn't even think. I kind of looked at bodybuilding as like just an outlet, as a hobby to kind of pursue, keep me from doing other things, but wasteful with my time or money, I guess you could say, right? Everyone has their own hobbies. Some people like cars, shopping, sneakers, jewelry, watches, stuff like that. And for me, I was always big into sports, but um, I came to sense with the reality, with the genetics I'm given, of how far those things can go. So I just pursued education when I went to college, and didn't really try to make any type of D1 team or something crazy like that. So that's how I found the gym and bodybuilding. And I just felt that the effort that I put in, I didn't need a teammate or anything. Obviously, having a training partner and stuff is awesome, but it was something that I could pursue and progress with based on my ability to kind of stick to a diet, or at least show up every day, right? As far as like the coaching aspect, I guess you could say I fell into it by personal experience, right? So when I had done my first show, I used a local coach, like a lot of the fellas and girls actually in town were doing. And the results of everyone were just inconsistent. There were some people that did really well, some people that didn't do so well. And, from an outsider's perspective, sometimes you just assume maybe that person's more gifted, right? Or maybe they started earlier. But for me, I looked at it by comparing when someone actually started, how much progress they were making, how the diets looked, and things like that. And that's when I realized there's like some type of cookie cutter approach, kind of, that's often given to many athletes. And me specifically, I had completed that prep. This is back in 2014. I did my first show. I was training alongside a gentleman and his girlfriend at the time, and we all had the same coach, all had very similar diets, same foods, same breakdown of macronutrients, just a little bit different portions. And that's how I came to learn. But what I realized was all the athletes that were under that coach, some of them did good, some of them didn't do so well. And when I got into coaching, that's when I just took the opportunity through doing my own research and learning a little bit from Phil that every person is unique and truly independent. Right? So they should be looked at that way and not just given some type of generic template. And it wasn't exactly my first experience with the diet. I had used um, through research, bodybuilding forums. I've seen templates of other things, and generally, what the standard is in the industry is like protocols, right? And we see it even today with gut protocols, SIBO protocols. We see it with PEDs. Oh, you should be using this at 16 weeks out, 12 weeks out, 8 weeks out, 4 weeks out. And diets are very similar. Now, because of modern times and our contemporary era, there are many things that have changed that have led to improvements in many of these areas. But however, for the most part, I come across a lot of different people I speak with that still get those cookie cutter approaches and are treated that way, you know?
Yeah, I think that really just stems from a lack of education and how a lot of things work, and really just thinking that there's going to be a base protocol to fix and address every scenario that you're put in. And obviously, we know that's not how it actually works in practical application. And a lot of people, may use these things and just get lucky and then use that as proof of results to try to further push themselves as a coach in their business. But when you first started coaching, was underfilled? That whole scenario was first underfilled when you first
Yeah,
initially
Phil,
started?
Phil I just mentioned, I remember it kind of like it was yesterday. After one of my little cat naps, 'cause I don't sleep much, I had woken up, on a mattress in the basement where I lived. I didn't have a box spring or anything like that. And he had sent me a message. Did you ever think about coaching? No, Phil, I didn't ever think about coaching. I'm going to my corporate job. Like, that's what I went to school for. That's my A path, or that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to get my master's, and that's what my primary focus is. But he just said, "Hey, I just figured I'd throw it out there. I feel like you are very, very intelligent, and you ask unique questions, and then you remember what I tell you." And to me, I've just always been someone very studious. So when someone gives me a textbook, tells me what they need done, I'm very book smart. I've always been that way. Now, I'm not saying I'm not street smart by any means, but I was always tailored to excel in school and really maximize my time in the classroom. And I took that very serious. So just as much as someone might take streaming and social media very serious, I took textbooks and classes. So when I was given a grade, I wanted to be the top one. That was my primary goal. I want to be valedictorian. I want to be number one throughout high school. That's what I want, right? And how can I
Yeah.
accomplish that? So when he had approached me, I was kind of caught off guard, but I didn't really think much of it. I didn't really know how to start it. But to me, I'm always a hustler. I always want to work very hard and try to level up financially and just be successful, right? What is the American dream at the end of the day is to be successful, to make an impact. And I said, you know what? Like, I have the time. So let me put the time in instead of playing video games and stuff, put the controller down. I'm already bodybuilding. So maybe I can start to apply myself and help other people as well. So I was down to try.
Okay. And at that point, you were already, what did you go to school for? What were you working as?
So I was basically a senior financial analyst at the time. I think when I started probably coaching, I had probably left Johnson and Johnson. I was with Hikma Pharmaceuticals, so it was a pharmaceutical company, And basically, I was working in the FP&A team, so financial planning analysis, doing like merger and acquisitions, forecasting, things like that, and reporting. And basically, I went to school for finance and BATE, business analytics, information technology. So my background was primarily corporate finance.
And at what point did you decide to leave that to go full in on coaching?
Unfortunately, I left in 2021. And I say unfortunately because part of me always looks at the time I put into school and stuff as a waste a bit, right? I wish I kind of went to school for to study something in the medical field that could have helped me apply things today, potentially got ahead of the curve a bit more. Yeah, in 2021 is when I realized on paper this makes the most sense. I have an opportunity. I had moved down to Florida. You kind of know my story a little bit, and I couldn't. The pandemic was ending, so they wanted us to return to work, and I just wasn't going to fly back. I didn't actually tell them at the time that I was moving states. So coming into the office Monday to Friday just wasn't really, going to be possible anymore.
Yeah. So that's 2021. I feel like you were already pretty established as a coach, no?
For sure, yeah. I
So
mean, from all accounts, really, from a financial standpoint, I could have made the commitment. I'd given it some consideration in January of the prior year of 2020, but as we know how history unfolds in March, we had this wonderful pandemic that kind of shut everything down and made me grateful that I didn't leave for coaching at the time because you realize that coaching is almost a luxury. When people can't go to the gym, they start to cut expenses. And again, when someone gets to a position to where they're looking at their top line, not making the money anymore, and the costs are still the same, they have to make cuts somewhere. And coaching, if you can't go to the gym, doesn't really make much sense, right?
yeah, yeah, for sure. It's funny you say that because during that time frame was when I actually was able to go all in on
Really?
coaching. Yeah, but tell me about that because as you and I both know, coaching is extremely time consuming, especially when you're dealing with a large volume of clients. So how did you really, I guess, balance working a full-time job like that and then having a coaching business? And then at that time, I think you were still actively competing at that point too, right?
Yeah, I definitely had, I guess you could say, like three full time jobs, right? Because competing, if you're really trying to be the best, is priority all times of the day. It was tough. I'm not going to lie and say there's any formula for it. The reality is, I didn't put the time into my recovery that I probably should have, which probably inhibited the possibility of me being a better competitive bodybuilder. At the time, I just didn't have any other choice, right? I was either going to have to cut back what I was doing for my team at, in the corporate America, or I was going to have to cut back on clients. And again, my main thing, people that get to know me, and as you kind of know, I really care about helping people, right? I really want to make a difference. If I feel like I can help you genuinely, awesome, I'm here for it. If I think someone's better off handling someone, hey, let me accommodate you. Let me set up the meeting for you. Let me push you in that direction because I just want to see you be successful. I don't want to waste someone's time. So that has been like what's most valuable to me is I look at people. Sometimes I value their time more than I do than my own, which I guess you could say is a character flaw, but that's how I look at it. So when someone tells me what's going on and I feel like they're wasting time or I'm going to waste their time, I try to just say, hey, like I don't want to go down this path. I don't think this relationship's going to work for X, Y, and Z reasons and things like that. But getting back to your question specifically, I didn't sleep too much. As I mentioned, my cat nap I alluded to earlier, I would probably sleep about 4 hours. I'd wake up every morning pretty much 5:45, 6, get my cardio in. I would go to work from 8 to 6, depending on busy season. I'm working 6 hours a week. Then I leave the gym. I train. My training sessions weren't the shortest, we can say. I'd get home, eat, and then I got coaching. Right, so I'd coach from 10 to 1, and people, a lot of my clients that I still have, and even occasionally when I get into a bad habit of doing more work at night to catch up with things, they
Hmm.
used to always get emails and updates middle of the night. They're like, "Kyle, why are you sending me emails 2 or 3 in the morning?" And that's when I did my coaching. So it worked because people usually can't respond at that time, which helps me get through things. As opposed to in the morning, you send an email out. There's a follow up question. I'm getting it by mid afternoon or before the day's over.
Yeah, yeah. When you get to the work at night, you could just kind of flow through everything as opposed to in the morning you go through something, then you get a response back immediately, and it just becomes like it turns into what could have taken a couple hours into 5 hours now because everybody is just all trying to communicate at the same time.
Precisely.
But yeah, so you eventually left that job.
Mhm.
You think you obviously took the most out of your own, I don't want to say your own goals because you obviously pursued coaching, but and from a bodybuilding perspective, that's where the biggest cut was.
Of like the three jobs.
Yeah, that's where you put
Yeah,
the least
looking
amount of
back,
energy.
I mean, I thought I was still optimizing things because I was taking more than what's needed. Let's say I tried to optimize every pharmaceutical. That route I definitely pursued to its fullest, trying to kind of be ahead of times, I guess you could say. But the reality is, nothing. Sleep is king, right? So if you're not getting good quality sleep at that, not quantity but quality, you are going to see it be. There's a negative impact thereafter at some point when you look back, especially.
Yeah, I bring that up because this past year I have. It's been almost an entire year since I've really, I guess, bodybuilded. Right, all my training has pretty much been revolved around rehabilitation work and mobility stuff like that. I'm slowly being able to get back into it now, but now being able to make that transition from this entire year was really all coaching and business comes first over everything because those bodybuilding goals weren't even tangible. Everything's on pause. So it's now bringing that back into play and making that a priority and almost not like taking a step back from coaching, but valuing the other goal as much rather than staying up till 3 a.m. to get work done, rather than letting doing check-ins interfere with my ability to just get the next meal down instead of like being on it. And I think that's what really, regardless of anybody's scenario, that's what makes the difference between the best athletes and the ones who aren't the best, is the ones who really bodybuilding comes first over every single thing in life.
I would agree with that. I think the most successful bodybuilders that we can think of from any time are usually the most selfish ones because you need to be selfish to pursue that highest level in this sport specifically. I think in any sport, you need to obviously hone in on your skills and master your craft, but specifically in bodybuilding, you can't make up for things, right? You could have a bad game, and watch film, etc., but you can't really miss 2 days of meals and then make up for that, right? There's no
Mhm.
formula for that, at least to date. So in your case, I think the hardest thing may be trying to get back into it and not cutting back, right? To where I think a lot of some of the clientele that I work with, that some of them are prior competitors. Sometimes there are people currently competing, but they also are entrepreneurs potentially. I think it's just about optimizing your schedule and learning to say no to certain things as opposed to just saying yes and adding onto your plate with meaningless tasks almost, right? Delegating those little, the 80% of your work and really focusing on the 20% that drives 80% of the business.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I think it's just, I don't know if you've ever taken long breaks from just training as a whole. This is the longest break that I've taken, and it's almost like I've programmed myself to get dopamine from other aspects of life because it's just been cut out entirely. Like before, a year ago, I would have, I have to train today. I have to eat right now, and like that's what's gonna give me that response, that dopamine response. Even though I might not physically want to eat in that moment, it's like this is what I'm gonna get my sense of fulfillment from. And now it's like, well, I need to get through all these check-ins, otherwise, I'm not going to be able to. Uh, it's just that's where my fulfillment comes from right now. It's just getting the work done, and when I'm in that flow state, it's like I don't want to break it, but it's having
Yeah,
to reprogram myself to, be able to put that on pause and still do the other shit that I need to do.
it's definitely pretty challenging. And yeah, I mean, getting back into it, it's not easy, right? You asked, the longest break I ever took basically was I didn't really take a break until I got injured, and I was forced to take a break, and I've been injured back to back years. So it was a overdue break that was needed, but now it was forced upon me for an unextended period of time. And getting back into it now, a lot of people see as I'm back training and putting back on, I guess, size. It's just not as easy. And I think more so, not because I'm older, but because my priorities have shifted as I know
Hmm.
I'm getting better. I know when I was pursuing bodybuilding, I was never going to be an Olympian. I never wanted to be an Olympian because I knew what came with that territory, right? A very secluded lifestyle and the almost the opposite of who I am to the core. So my goal was just to be the best version that I can be and use myself as a guinea pig to practice what I preach. So I'm never having a client do something that I know I didn't do or couldn't do or don't know the repercussions thereafter, at least from a personal standpoint. So that's been the most challenging thing in the break when I was hurt. And obviously for you, you had this recovery phase. So you learned to get dopamine from other events. But in a weird way, you should have always been able to have that. Right. And I think we put the blinders on like a horse in a race to where, we think this is the only way to build a good physique. But you can, as you're going to phase back in, I hope to get back into bodybuilding because I think you have good potential. You'll find that you still are getting now dopamine from two places, which is actually almost tremendously better than just having the one avenue.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely see what you mean. So, was that injury that you had the reason why I don't even know. Are you done competing for good or do you want to continue?
Guess we will find out, right?
Okay, so you haven't.
My thing is, I want to look like I can stand on the national stage, be a first call out, be someone very good. But my main thing is just I want to be able to out train my clients. That's what I pride myself on, is being able to push them to a degree that they need to be at to really operate at the highest level. And if that comes with competing and it works into my schedule, I'm getting married next year, then thereafter, I'm sure there will be little ones in the mix. So my priorities just changed. Unfortunately, I kind of run out of time. So it's a sad story if you think about it, right? When you're forced into growing up. But at the same time, I just want to make sure I'm not sacrificing other people's, like my clients and what comes with that, right? So if I find a way where back when I was at my best, I guess you could say, right before the pandemic, I looked probably 6 to 8 weeks out and I was thoroughly enjoying life. I wasn't trying very hard. I was a creature of habit. So, I had my normal Monday to Friday on lock because I'm going to the office. So I can't really cheat on my diet unless I physically go out and go get food and come back. But Saturday, Sunday, I would have my one free meal per week and I would just kind of reset me mentally. And I was able to lock in. I looked awesome. And that was the point I want to get back to where I look like I'm ready to compete. It's just a matter of if timing and my schedule allowed me to successfully put forth what's needed, because there's no point in competing if I can't be better than my previous version, right? It's not my first rodeo. So why would I waste all that effort, money, health, and time into something if I know I can't be better than what I was?
Of course. You said you want to be able to out train your clients. Do you train physically with them?
I try to, yeah.
So when you're putting them through a leg workout, are you doing legs too?
I'm doing legs too. I'm just not peeled over.
Did you ever out train Phil?
Well, we can leave that up to Phil. I think I got him a few times, but he was one person that was very. The way I push people, I'll post like videos of Anton, for example, puking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I laugh because that was me for a while. And then you eventually get to a point where it just doesn't really happen anymore, no matter how hard you're pushing. You either, that's just like you train your body to be able to tolerate that type of stimulus, that type of stress. So that was me for a long time with Phil, right? For consecutive weeks, every Monday, Friday, we train legs for, you know the story, for about 8 to 10 weeks. And that taught me a lot because I would get my ass kicked and I enjoyed it. It was weird, right? I enjoyed getting my ass kicked, and hey, I woke up the next day, I still have the opportunity to be a better version of myself and focus getting my meals in, recover from everything, and how can I push myself harder next time? How can I finally get to the point where I can hang? You know?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you say that. I saw those videos, and I'm pretty sure I've already said this to you. I've said it a bunch of times on this channel. Is that if you've never thrown up during legs, you've never trained legs hard, which a lot of people find to be a controversial statement. It's always dependent on the individual, but I would say for the vast majority of people, if you've never gone through a leg workout where you have actually thrown up simply just due to the amount of damage your nervous system is taking from that session, not because you just ate right before, but like just from the amount of effort being given in those sets, I've never seen somebody with great legs that hasn't thrown up from training. That's just an anecdote, though.
Correct. And you're always going to have the other school of thought that is it needed? Just who's to argue, right? I have my side, you have yours, and I can't disagree with what you're saying. I agree with that to the most, for the most part. Um, I think there's a difference. Sometimes people you can run around like a squirrel at the gym doing supersets. You're going to throw up, sure, because you're not giving your body a chance. You're not getting any oxygen, right? So it's kind of you're forcing yourself to have that state. But from just doing a pure straight set, we're not doing drop sets. When you're seeing this kid puke, or if I ever post anyone or anybody that listens to this that train with me, we've all been there, and it's
Mhm.
usually not from drop sets or giant sets or whatever type of intensifier you want to think of. It's just from a straight set of really pushing yourself and realizing as you're throwing up and after you throw up, as much as that sucks, you're capable. Like, damn, I can do this. I didn't think I could do it. That was the hardest set of my life. And then you do it again, and you realize when you start applying that to other body parts, shit, I can actually like put on some muscle. I'm growing. I feel pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I think it's really just the simple fact that from what I've seen with so many people that I've worked with now, and just from doing this for so long, is that when it comes to training legs specifically, almost everybody is never really at true failure. Like there's almost always some more in the tank, and it usually takes some type of external motivation to really get somebody to unlock that, drive that adrenaline, and really get them to fight for another rep. Because if you look at it through their lens, it's like, oh, this was failure. But then you put them through that same sets, they got four more reps. But the amount of how those four reps affect the nervous system it's a whole different level. And is the throwing up part needed? It's not needed. I think it's just part of the process of acclimating to that level of training, and it's usually almost going to happen unless the person is like a very seasoned athlete and just has the ability to withstand that type of stress, I guess, on the body.
For sure. I think as you become more advanced, you don't need to necessarily push as hard because you're connecting so well with all of your sets and exercises as opposed to a beginner. They might not really know how to engage their quads on a leg extension. They could do the reps. But when you're squatting, at some point when you bend down and have to stand up, for the lack of better words, of whatever machine we're talking about, your quads are everything's getting worked, right? You have to stand up. So how are you going to stand up? So everything takes over. So whether or not you were able to contract or squeeze the muscle before the set, it's forced to work because if it doesn't work, you don't stand up. So I think once you become neurologically perfect, I guess once you become a more professional and seasoned athlete that can train and understand how muscles connect and what helps you connect with certain muscles, whether you need a little bit of a warm up or perhaps certain um, movement patterns that work better to facilitate that stimulus. I think in the beginning stages, it's often needed, and you learn from it.
Yeah, I think it's important to learn from other people. I think it's really hard to even push yourself to that point on your own. It's extremely difficult because you're not even aware. You're not aware until somebody shows you.
No, exactly. And then when you have a good training partner, not necessarily someone that's as strong as you, but someone that pushes really hard, they're on the ground in between sets because they're dying, quote unquote, right? They're gasping for air. They need a breather. When it's their set and they get back up, there's something about that you realize, damn, like this person, I thought they were done, and here they are, fourth rep in. Like, let me help them,
Mhm.
So that's like the competitive drive of it. And again, that's what I like about bodybuilding is that type of training. It's just you versus you're competing against yourself. But what fuels you, what motivates you, you can grasp and gather from a lot of different sources. And I think when I'm with clients that have never trained that way, I always tell them when I work out with them, if it's the first time, it's not going to be the best workout. I just want to apply things and teach you things that you can utilize for other workouts and in the future. But when I have someone come back for a few sessions or I'm constantly with them, learning what makes them tick is like a hidden gem. So what's going to maybe piss someone off or drive that adrenaline? What is the thought process? What are the things I need to whisper in their ear? How do I need to carry myself to motivate them? Right? If I go into the gym and I'm lackadaisical and I don't really want to be here. Okay, well, that person is just probably going to feed off that energy and have a shitty, lackluster workout. But if I go in and I'm super pumped and amped, and they're seeing me week to week, all of a sudden keep progressing and add tens every week on this exercise, they're not going to grab the 2.5. They're going to grab the 10, right? They're going to start pushing themselves to try to keep up because we're competitors, or at least the people I try to surround myself with are those sharks as well. That's what I really want.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point because this brings up something that I see very prevalent in this industry right now with and I'm going to ask you about this too with the whole all the training approaches now and the rise of the science-based community, I guess we'll say for lack of a better phrase, but a lot of the things that they point to, yes, there is validity to them in some sense. Just as a general statement, what I see that's a common trend amongst a lot of these things is that it's almost like they're all looking for easier alternatives and approaches rather than they're so worried about the fatigue, so worried about like always just trying to major in the minors. Not that these things don't matter, because they all do matter, but the people who are obsessing over these things and getting analysis paralysis are the same people that just need to go into the gym and just fucking train balls to the wall, and that's what's going to probably produce the best results at the end of the day. But you said you like to tell your clients things that you know how you're going to get to their head, and I think this is another thing that a lot of people miss out when they're looking at this whole idea of bodybuilding, right? They think everything's this mathematical formula, and this is how I'm going to get from point A to point B, and I can do it in the most optimal way. But a lot of people don't talk about the fact that you need to have passion in this, and emotional drive plays such a huge factor into everything. It drives so much into your training and what you're able to get out of it, your longevity and how long you're actually gonna be able to stick through this and not give up when shit just gets mundane or boring, and now you're trying to always just move things around just because on paper this is okay. I don't know, how do you feel about that? I think that's something that really is not recognized enough.
So I guess the overarching theme here, what are my thoughts on the fact that intensity is kind of king and the reigning hidden variable here? Is that
The
kind of
fact that you're telling your clients, you're saying you're trying to get into their head, it's because you're trying to get an emotional response, right?
yeah? I'm trying to facilitate. I'm trying to piss them off almost, but not to the point where they hate me. To the point where they love it in a
Yeah.
weird way, right? To where they're very, again, for me, I feed off passion. You could be the worst genetically gifted bodybuilder. I'll be honest and tell you probably not to pursue this, but from a training standpoint, like that's the fun part, right? So when people are like miserable and they don't want to train, I don't. This is definitely not for you because the most boring part of bodybuilding is outside the gym when you eat the same meals, have to pass up on certain social events, and make those sacrifices to be consistent. That's the boring, mundane part. The fun and enjoyable part is in the gym. Are in those moments to where you came into the gym maybe not feeling the greatest, whether you're sick or not, but maybe you had a bad day, you're feeling down, and then you get that drive and you have like a really good workout, right? Those are always the ones where people feel really fulfilled. And a lot of people, they think the gym is a stress therapy, which I don't want to go down that route because it's not. However, a lot of people find joy in that.
Yeah. What I'm essentially trying to get at here is there is a very big emphasis on trying to do things the most optimal way and perfect everything. And the people who are obsessed over these things, they're not pros. They're not people at the level where this shit like actually comes into more of importance and can make a difference in between something they've been stalling out with. It's the people who are been training for 1 to 2 years and they want to look like the next Chris Bumstead, but they're in the gym hyper focused on the logbook. They can't just go in there. They're afraid of the failure, and it's like you said, that's the fun part of training is just going in there, bringing everything to the table, having that intensity. And I
Mhm.
think if you're trying to overthink all these things and not just enjoying the process and not pushing yourself to the absolute maximum that you level that you can get at that point at least, and I mean if you're pursuing bodybuilding, I would hope that you have passion in this. I know for myself, when I would go to the gym and like constantly look at the logbook and say I need to do this, like I can't do this exercise, and it's just that fucks with everything to me. Like it takes all the fun out of the training, and it's like I just want to go in there and let everything out and go hard as fuck. Like I said, I have a guideline, a blueprint I'm going to follow. I know the staples, but I'm not sitting there trying to calculate everything and worried about saving reps in reserve. Like I think that just really ruins the training aspect for me. And even on paper, if that should produce better results, how it actually works in application, it ends up with worse results in my experience.
No, I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, a lot of the community are focused on how can we expedite results, right? People go to the gym. Why do they go to the gym? To look better, to become stronger, to become better athletes. I don't think, I hope if those are not your answers and you just go to the gym because you're bored, okay, right? That's definitely not someone I want to work with because they're not trying to become a better version of themselves or they don't want to be healthier. But a lot of people that are just trying to optimize things and go for mathematical equations, those are the people that belong at the desk. All right. Those are the people who go behind the computer and keep punching things in. And oftentimes I was used to like the holidays when I was in college because I would come back home to local gyms and see the same individuals that perhaps I was able to see and have the opportunity to see when I'm training during the, off months from school. And noticing people that just never make progress. They always look the same, no matter what. And I know sometimes people are, whether they're natural, enhanced, there are people that are focused so much on the logbook to where they're carrying around the notebook back in the day. Maybe now they use their phone, but they think they're training and you watch their sets and you're never going to make progress that way. Right.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of these studies that show things, a lot of the science-based community, they're not wrong in what they're making claims to. However, what these claims are based off of the research that's done are never on actual meathead bodybuilders. And what I mean by meathead bodybuilders, the best clients I work with, and maybe not for you, but are usually the ones that are not the most intelligent. Okay. The ones that they'll ask questions. So it has nothing to do with the questions they ask, but they're not overanalyzing everything they do. Hey, I only had a half a gallon of water before my workout today. Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't give a fuck. Like, what do you mean? Right. So there are some people that go in and they have to warm up for 30 minutes. I remember I had a client literally has looked the same in the last 12, 15 years. I go back, I shit you not, right? I can show you after the call. And it's not to poke fun at some individual, but it's just at what point do you realize you're not making progress? You're wasting time and your time is better served somewhere else or helping other people potentially, but not in bodybuilding because you don't have any anecdotal evidence to go off of. But I
Mhm.
think the science-based community, you have to realize a lot of this research that's done, even on like supplements, they're not done on human beings, right? We don't know the repercussions. We're going off of, oh, they did it on a rat, or we took this population and we did this study. It doesn't always work that way, right? And when I was in the pharmaceutical in finance and pharmaceuticals, and we would look at different, I guess, going back to one of my previous jobs, there are different labs and that are, how am I trying to word this? There are different trials that things have to go through before they ever get approved, right? So when you see a drug that's approved and it's FDA approved, because that's a whole process in itself, there are so many different trials that are run and experiments because they're ultimately trying to prove why it won't work.
Mhm.
And that's where they find success. So when you're not able to do that and a drug is actually going to work and there's nothing you compare it with that will mess it up, that in itself is a hard thing to accomplish. So when we have these, I'm trying to think of why I even brought that up, to be honest with you. Train of thought here. But basically, what I was saying was more so from a research standpoint on a
Oh,
lot of
science based, yeah.
yeah, they're not done on actual people, right? So when I'm seeing, hey, we had these trials and these people died and it didn't work, right? They participated in this and it didn't work. We're not doing that with supplements. We're just assuming that, hey, it showed that for this general population, these 10 people that were isolated that took this and trained this way compared to these other 10 people, they don't consider intensity in any of that stuff, right? So
Well, the thing about intensities, I don't want to, it is subjective in a sense. There's objectiveness to intensity, but from your own perception, it can become entirely subjective. That's what I was talking about before. Is you know tell me how you feel about that. How do you feel about the use of reps in reserve in training protocols? Because this is another issue that I see with it. Is on paper we could say, well, you're going to get less fatigue if you use a couple reps in reserve, and you're going to get the same result, right? So why go to absolute failure just to produce that additional fatigue to carry over that's just could potentially interfere with progression? But then it's like that person's perception of RIR can be entirely different just based off of how they fucking feel.
So I think our RIR in theory is a good thing. However, where it fails, let's just say you don't have someone like me that is pushing people to their brink to where they, yes, they are throwing up. They feel like shit. They can't do another rep. They like, they're falling over. If you don't know what zero RIR is, how the hell do you know what one RIR is? Right. So when it go back to when you saw in the textbooks 3 sets of 10.
Hmm.
How in theory can I do 3 sets of 10 with the same weight with a minute to 2 minute rest time and say that I did 3 max effort sets? It's not fucking possible, right?
Yeah.
I didn't come back later in the day. You didn't give me this drug in between and let me recoup. You eat a meal and come back. So when someone says, "Oh, I did 3 sets of 10 with the same weight," no, no, you didn't. You did 3 working sets. Perhaps you stimulated it enough into the hypertrophy rep range, but you didn't do 3 max effort sets. A max effort set can't be repeated today, and if it could, then you were sandbagging or dogging, whatever terminology you like to use, those prior sets. So a lot of my training, my beliefs on it, especially in those beginning years, someone that's never been in the gym, you could squat, bench, deadlift. You could do the basics, right? Get a foundation for things. Try to understand how compound movements work. As you start to get into bodybuilding and you start to isolate different groups, you're going to realize that not everything grows uniformly. There are certain body parts that work better for other people or for an individual. They might notice their back grows or the chest grows, their back doesn't grow. Once you can build muscle, right, from a genetic standpoint, your body, you can either build muscle or you can't. Your genetics allow you to build muscle, or your genetics don't allow you to build muscle. Now, not talking specifics about how the shape of your muscles or where they insert or any of those aspects, but just in the general sense of if someone can build muscle and they lack muscle in a body part, obviously how they're training and how they're connecting is wrong, right? They're not, whether they need some body work done perhaps, or they need to retweak the structure and the order of their workouts. Those are all things that need to be looked into. But when you get into this whole RIR thing and how this all ties together, I think people don't realize that you can't apply those techniques until you've learned truly what max effort would mean for you. And I'm not saying you might train a certain way in legs and I look at it and say, I think you had a couple more. And you might be so experienced that, hey, I know I didn't have any more. I know it looks like I could have did more, but I know I couldn't have did any more. I would snap something. Right. And I think an experience like there's someone like Nick now that I have under my belt. I know from back in the day when he first started training with me, we look back and laugh because we did entirely probably too much, right? We would push each other to the fucking brink every single day to where we sit in the car for an hour after because we are
Yeah.
shot, right? Was that necessary looking back? I think it was necessary to prepare our future thereafter. How long we did that for, maybe we extended it a little too long, okay? But we know what training hard is. And now once you again couple that with advancing and being able to neurologically connect, now you realize, okay, I don't need to do 3 max effort sets. One set is going to get it done. Or if I'm feeling my joints are hurting, I'll do 3 working sets, but I'm not going to go to absolute failure. However, at any given time, if I say do a set to failure, he could do a set to failure. He say, I don't think this is a good idea, but I'll do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the difference. So when I have someone super advanced now, and then I have I don't want to say beginner, but an intermediate. Okay, someone that maybe they compete in a local show, they're trying to become a national level bodybuilder. Usually, there's a lot of juice to be squeezed out of the training and how hard they push and the intensity. So, intensity is again something that isn't studied because it's subjective. How hard you push, how hard I push, goes back to our upbringing. Maybe the kid there's a wrestler. I don't want to say his name, but he was a very good wrestler in New Jersey. And growing up, his father would duct tape his hands to the pull up bar and not undo it until he gets a certain amount. Some may say that's child abuse. Other people may say, hey, that's how you train a fucking warrior, right? That's some crazy shit. You don't see that nowadays, really. Parenting is different. But, and again, not saying that I approve of those things, though it worked. The reality is when you are able to teach someone how to tap into really pushing themselves and bringing everything out, like Godzilla's chasing them, right? Or you're someone's stuck under a car, you got to lift the car. We see studies to where people all of a sudden can lift a car. How is that possible? Something is working there. It's not God's way of pulling the car and, reverse gravity here. So I
Adrenaline.
think all of those things are, unfortunately, with the science-based community, that's where I can't get behind those theories, because if you negate the intensity factor, it's just not going to work. And I haven't seen anyone that swears to, hey, I've been following my logbook and I don't train with any type of intensity and I get results. I don't see it, but maybe I just don't look in the right places.
I don't think they even say that. I think it's just a lot of the people, and when I say science-based community, it's just the fact that the people who I always see identify and label themselves as science-based are the people who don't understand science. There are guys that are involved in, I guess, what we would consider is the real science-based community that are very intelligent and understand nuance and
Yeah.
I like a lot of their stuff. But when I'm thinking of science-based community as a whole, I'm just thinking of all these kids on TikTok running around thinking that they know everything and have figured out the perfect way to train and are smarter than Hani Rambod for whatever reason.
But do you
But
think that people actually truly believe that, or that's somewhat of a facade?
I think they actually believe it because of all the information they've been exposed to at this point on social media. It's like there has been such a what's the word I'm looking for when you like I guess frown upon or disrespect towards like bodybuilding coaches in the bodybuilding community because these guys come out and they post the abstract of a study and it creates this feeling of superiority like, oh, I understand science now because I read something on PubMed and it doesn't I now what these guys are saying on the Olympia stage or these coaches doesn't make sense according to this data, even though I don't even understand the mechanisms behind how any of this shit works. All I know is what I'm reading right here on a piece of paper. So what these guys are saying, it's just chalk it up to gear. If you're on gear, you can do anything, and it's just Dunning Kruger. It's people thinking they're smarter than they are. It's a huge,
Yeah.
huge bubble of these kids in this echo chamber agreeing on the same shit, and it's
But,
hilarious.
but
But
that's where I just simply point to, just show me the results, right? If that's what you truly believe works, show me. You can't show me for 150 pounds, right?
yeah,
And I'm willing to, anyone who listens to this that supports that and believes in that, I will pay for a year of growth, a year of whatever gear you want. You keep training the same way, and let's see what actually works. Because when push comes to shove, they're going to have a reason why it doesn't work, or something else has to be in the equation, right? You mentioned Chris earlier. I've trained with Chris numerous times. There's videos of Chris on the ground after some leg sessions. He pushed hard. We weren't 2 reps in reserve on this set, Chris. Fuck no. It's like, hey, let's do a drop set here. Let's do an ISO hold here, and let's see what we can get out of the hour and a half that we have today. So like that to me has always been the funnest way to train, or most enjoyable. And funnest is not really the best word. Um, and I think it's just a missing piece of the equation. So a lot of these things that you're alluding to, I don't even pay mind to, if I'm being honest, with the science based stuff, because if you don't have results to show and people that have applied these techniques, I don't really care what it says, because how many times do we realize we'll read things after the fact that come true, right? So in this case, maybe what they're saying and claiming, and again, I like that you specified not the people that are actually acclaimed scientists and are specifying certain things, but more the kid that didn't go to college and just read some textbooks and a couple of studies on PubMD. I want to see results. That's so. If I don't see those things, I don't really care what you're saying. I think a lot of people think they know everything, but again, you need to keep an open mind. So there's always something you can learn from anyone.
yeah. It's just it's amazing. I saw a video the other day of this kid's literally like probably 120 pounds soaking wet, and he's basically just made a video showing Hani Rambod on the screen. He's like, this guy doesn't know anything. He's a drug dealer, not a real coach. There's nothing behind his training methods. It's like, I don't even know how you can gain the confidence to make that statement and put it online publicly.
But
But
it's more of like, where's that person going to be in 5 years? That's making that
yeah.
statement, So I don't know. I don't see many successful people that at least take that approach, especially when you're attacking someone else, right? If you're saying this person doesn't know what he's doing, okay, like he didn't know what he's doing. How did he have that much success? You don't accidentally step in shit 25 times. He won Olympia titles, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He got that lucky. Come on, man, that's not
Yeah.
possible, right? So it's just silly,
Yeah. But what you were saying about the training fund, back where we're coming back to here. Another thing you constantly see a lot of the kids in this community say, and I know you probably don't see a lot of it because I feel like you're kind of detached from that. And I've basically have monetized off of shutting these people down over the past few years. Like, this is what the majority of feedback I would get from, my content on TikTok and stuff, which I've been pretty absent from, but it's pushback from that type of community and seeing the way that I train and the shit that I put out there and be like, oh, well, there's no study that says that fast cardio is ideal or whatever. It's all about energy balance. And it's like, me having to explain these things, explain mechanisms. And that's, where I've gained a lot of my viewing from. So I constantly see this shit, and it's a cancer to the industry. But another thing that I see them say is, people will push back against them, be like, well, you guys are just taking the fun out of training. Training's supposed to be fun. Like we're saying here, putting having drive, intensity, all these things. And they're like, well, I train for results. I don't train for fun. It's like, every bodybuilder that you want to look like is a bodybuilder because they started by training for fun. That's the biggest aspect, is enjoyment in what you're fucking doing. I would say I don't want to say it's the number one in every case, because as you progress, if you need to do shit you don't want to do, you're going to find enjoyment in that. But that is like really the foundation of everything, is you going to the gym and enjoying your fucking time in the gym.
You definitely need to have a passion. Going back to what we said earlier, right? If you're not passionate about this, no motivation is not, nothing outlasts passion. When you want something and you manifest it in your head and you really go after it to the fullest. Right? Everyone has that one thing in life. The unfortunate part, fitness is super popular now, right? And I say super popular because compared to 15, 20 years ago, I think there's more gyms around, there's more members signed up at gyms, there's more people that are trying to eat a little bit healthier, right? So I'd say fitness as a whole is much more popular in today's society. But with that, you have people that think they can bodybuild. They think they could be, oh, if I took gear, I would do this. Oh, I could do that if I wanted. You can't, right? Not everyone can do what they think they can do. And that's why the premier sports, by premier, NFL, MLB, NBA, not every, the chance that there's this whole statistic, I think like one in every 4,000 like top one collegiate athletes can make it into the NBA. That's like such a small, if you think of it from a statistical standpoint, you shouldn't even try. Well, how the fuck? It's not possible. But like they don't any of those players, they're not thinking like that. They play sports when they're younger because they enjoy it. They have fun. They start to become really good. They practice more. They're on high level AAU teams, play well in college. Maybe they get a scholarship, NIL deals now, right? So there's ways to make money. But at some point, they're faced with the reality of like, okay, I can't. Bodybuilding is a little different because there's so many local shows. There's organizations that are natural, and you don't have people that are willing to be real with you because there's a lot of coaches that are in the gym. Oh, hey, you could do a show. Motherfucker, the dude is 130 pounds. What do you mean he could do a show? He's never even lifted before. He's talking about doing a show. So I think that's where people are just so out of tune. And again, it comes and goes. I'm not telling people not to get into bodybuilding, but realize, hey, this is a pursuit. So when I was younger, Sebastian, I don't know about you. Again, I'm not aging myself here, so fuck off. I used to look at and admire bigger guys, right? How do they get that big? Like, what the fuck? What are you taking? What are you doing? Right? What's the secret? And now when people come up to me, sometimes still, most of the time, they'll say, oh, like, how did you get so big? And in my head, I'm like, I took off 2 years. What do you mean? How did I get so big? But to the average person, I'm much bigger. And the reality is, looking back, well, I put like 10, 12 years into this shit now. That's how I was really consistent for a long time,
Yeah.
coupled with some obviously help from some certain supplements. That's the answer. So when people are 18, they're like, I want to look like this by 22. Okay, well, you're probably not. It's not normal, right? Just like you can't get into those premier sports. So you can participate and play, but at some point, I use the sports as an example. You have to stop playing sports, right? There's no more higher levels. You're now grown up. You have to go to work and you have kids and shit. Bodybuilding is the same way. Eventually, you can still go to the gym, but taking steroids, trying to do a show, where are you going? It stops. And the reason it stops is not, it could be the lack of passion if you don't have that to begin with, but ultimately it's because you're not making results. So if you're going to train a certain way and you believe in that, at least be able to look back 6 months, 12 months. Are you making progress? And be real with yourself. If you're not, you just lost a year of life. So it's that simple, in my opinion.
Yeah. How do you feel about the rise of all these new splits? They're not even new splits. I mean, they've been around forever. Um, upper, lower, full body, how they're resurfacing as the
Yeah.
best split you could possibly do.
So everyone always asks what the best split, the best diet, and
I
where
know.
it's individualized, it depends on a lot of circumstances, right? So from a training standpoint, since this is what this is about, I think you think of where you're at in your career. When you're first starting, again, incorporate those compound movements. If you were to sign up with coaching for me, or I signed up with you and you told me to bench squat deadlift, I'm going to tell you to F off because I can't anymore, man. We can't. So at some point, you have to like consider those variables. But I think, again, rule of thumb, are you making progress? Are you still enjoying it? Because if it's dreadful and you hate it, right? When I give someone a training split, my reason of giving them a training split is perhaps I'm trying to focus on a certain body part. You can't focus on all of them, right? So when you need to get better, okay, I need to get bigger everywhere. Okay, well let's break this down. We can still make improvements, but where can we maybe hyper focus for a little bit of time? And maybe the frequency is higher. So I don't know about you, but as far as like a basic split, I've had push pull legs type of split. I had more of the bro split where you're hitting one body part. I think as you get advanced, having blocks, I don't want to call them mesocycles, but that's what the popular term, cool term is now, or a mesocycle or something like that.
Micro,
But
meso,
something like
pretty
that.
good.
But I think higher frequency works to a degree. Again, coupled with the right nutritional approach, because again, if you're not eating, then I don't really care how you train. It's irrelevant. The training split, the training intensity, none of that's going to matter. So my take on it, again, people are so caught up in trying different things. Pick something, stick with it for at least 8 to 10 weeks, assess, go from there. If you're getting really strong, awesome. Are you a powerlifter or are you a bodybuilder? Because if you're a bodybuilder and you're getting stronger and you're not looking much bigger, okay, well, you're obviously missing out on something, right? So how can we add a little bit more metabolic stress, right? What type of movements do we need to add? Or maybe the rep range is too low that you're doing and you're getting strong, but how do we convert that and maximize on that opportunity? So that's what I try to look for. And again, when someone's bored, if someone comes to me and say, Kyle, like, I'm just really not enjoying the training. I'm kind of like bored. So it's been the same split for 8, 10 weeks. And on paper, usually if they're making great progress, let's just say I have someone that, first and foremost, I don't have someone log every single lift. Usually I pick like the meat and potatoes, the main movements. I don't really care what the fuck you're doing a cable curl with. Okay. If you're doing the same cable curl a year from now, you're probably not much bigger. But if we're doing a pressing movement or a rowing movement, a squat, something like that, if you're making progress week after week, usually I point to that and say, hey, you made a lot of progress and it's working. Like look how you look. And in other cases, all right, you're bored, you don't really have much motivation. Like, okay, I get it. I might so let's change up the split a little bit. But I don't just change up the split just because it's been 4 weeks. And I think that people just they don't want to stick bodybuilding. Again, not to go all over the place here, but bodybuilding is very boring as a whole. That's how it is. The same foods for the most part, same type of training, same type of drugs, all of those things. They don't really change too much. How you do it and how people try to exploit them, that's where there could be some synergy. But if you got to enjoy and have the passion to be in the gym, and then from a training split standpoint, I think you need to enjoy it, focus on what's producing results, and that's my take on the different training splits, at least as a general question.
Hmm. I think it comes back to another. thing I already said here with the rise of the new higher frequency type of approaches.
Mhm.
Again, it's not new. It's just resurfaced and has become a trend, which we'll see something else happen next year, as always. But people again hyper focusing on the logbook, right? We're bodybuilders, we're not powerlifters. Yes, you want progressive overload to happen. You want to get stronger over time. If you're stuck on the same numbers as you were 6 months ago, probably not a good sign. But at the same time, progressive overload in itself is not indicative of muscle growth, right? Just because you went from dumbbell pressing 100s to 120s doesn't necessarily mean that you actually gained tissue on your chest, right? So it's important to have the ability to actually physically assess your composition and your physique over the period. Again, it has to be muscle grows in grams. So you're looking at 6 months, look back, stick with something, and see how does your physique actually change in the areas that you wanted. And the only way you're also going to be able to see that is if you maintain good composition as well. But then again, you said you have them track staple movements because that's what I'll do as well. I mean, I tell them to log as they wish. I advise they do, but I'm not overseeing their specific logbook. But I tell them you should probably log if you're at a bare minimum, like a few staple movements and focus on progressively overloading those. But again, like you said, with cable curls and stuff like that, not really too worried about that. And people always want to stick with the exact same movements every week as well, which I am an advocate for the most part. But at the same time, it's like if you're doing cable curls and you want to do dumbbell curls next week, like don't fucking overthink it. Just do it,
No,
right? You know?
my main thing, I look at training plans for the most part as like a general template, right? Sometimes people don't have the luxury of going into a well-equipped gym, so they're limited. So in that case, obviously, okay, we don't have a hack squat, so we need to do a different type of movement, perhaps. As long as the angles stay the same. So if I'm doing back, for example, and I say maybe they're starting with some type of pull down, right? It's a wide grip pull down. You could do pull ups if you prefer on the assisted machine, right? There's not, say, the pull up bar is someone sitting on the cable doing 6 different attachments and 3 sets each, right? Don't wait until they're done. Substitute it with the right movement. If we're doing chest and it's supposed to be an incline bench and you like using the Smith machine, but Jack is sitting on the Smith machine for 10 minutes. Okay, do another incline pressing movement, right? So always have an A and a B week almost, or at least a backup plan. And again, you might enjoy the one exercise and really want to do it, but at the end of the day, you have to stay to the timing too. We don't want to sit in the gym for 3 hours, right? So we want to be optimal with it. So I encourage people, as you mentioned, the dumbbell curl example, say they're doing a bicep movement. Okay, if you want to do a preacher, the cable curl or a dumbbell curl or an easy bar, that's fine, right? Those are all very, very similar. So as long as we're not swapping things out and okay, instead of the incline bench, I did a decline today. Why?
Yeah.
What is that? Doesn't make much sense. So the one thing I wanted to touch on for the logbook, what the logbook doesn't have, it doesn't have any record of time under tension or tempo typically, right? That you can track. So when I see people mentioning, hey, I'm stronger, you use dumbbell, for example, they went from 100s to 120s. Rarely do I see people generally get stronger 20 pounds, for example, in the same reps without speeding up the set, right? Or maybe the first couple reps were good and then you cut the range of motion down. So all of these things are no longer, it's not a personal record anymore. You've now just kind of manipulated the exercise to make it a little easier and you got better at the movement pattern because that's something that happens too with the human body. We get used to doing something, right? So we
Hmm.
develop a new habit, new firing patterns, and we get good at it. Doesn't mean you're getting stronger or doing it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people focus on progressive overload as the only form of progression, right? It comes back to the hyper focus on logbook. Well, did I get stronger? Am I getting more reps? This is stuff is important, yes, but like people then will come to me and say, well, my bench or whatever hasn't moved in the past 2 3 weeks. I'm like, okay, well, let's compare what your bench looked like a month ago to now, right? And you could see their control or tempo substantially better, right? Maybe they're getting better activation. They feel their pecs firing better. So like that in itself, that is progress, right? We have had progress within the movement. You've become better at executing the movement. It's not just there's not just did the weight go up or did I get more reps? That's just only one measurement of progression happening.
No, for sure. And then another thing you have, let's just say I get someone, actually happened yesterday. they mentioned they feel that they're not getting stronger. It's been 3 weeks in a row. The main variable to consider that a logbook is not going to have, right, is one's mental health, and then the other aspects. And by the other aspects, they don't really fall under a general term. So let's just say the person had, I haven't really gotten stronger in 3 weeks. Okay, well, like, how you been with your nutrition? Oh, I've been missing meals. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, I haven't been sleeping much. I'm fighting with my significant other. Okay. Oh, my shoulder's actually been hurting me a little bit. Okay, right. So these are all things that the logbook isn't showing, right? You've now adjusted your training a little bit, or you're actually stalling on paper because you're missing other crucial aspects that have to work together. So I think to optimize everything, again, there's a lot of variables to consider to where the training split isn't the problem sometimes. Sometimes the problem is the person in the mirror not doing the other shit right, looking for shortcuts, not sleeping, not optimizing nutritionally in their recovery phases, right? They're not, just because they're in bed, maybe they're not getting quality sleep. Maybe they're sitting on their phone and stuff like that. So those are all things that will throw off any training split. And you can even have the right tempo and have intensity, but if you're not doing those things right, you're not going to see progress. And then you have that community now, which I'm inferring. So I'm not, thank God I'm not in it, but I'm inferring they'll chalk it up. Oh, it's not working. That you can't do it this way. Well,
Hmm.
what the fuck do you mean? Like, these things are more important. It's almost, these are prerequisites. Right? I'm assuming you're going to follow the nutritional plan. So when you check in and tell me, hey, I followed all my meals, cool. I don't even like, not only take a good job, you're supposed to do that. Like, I
Yeah.
take care of my kids. You're supposed to take care of your kids. Like, what
Yeah.
the fuck? So from the training standpoint, that's where the most progress can be driven, assuming everything else is in line. So if you're someone that just changes what they do on a weekly basis, you can still make progress if you're doing everything else right. But it doesn't mean that that style is going to get you very far. It's just like a beginner has those newbie gains. You're going to make a lot of progress, gain a lot of muscle. You might be doing shit wrong. But at some point, I don't care what cycle you're taking. Think of the pros. How much do they really improve year to year? Not very much sometimes. It's hard to put on muscle at some point when you start to hit that like genetic like ceiling, right? So where it's really hard to pack on more muscle, you really need to optimize everything. And that's where I think people assume they are and they're not sometimes, right? So that's something to consider as well.
That's a funny point because I'm not sure if you've seen this study either, but it gets brought up all the time. And I really hate that it gets brought up because it's such a fucking stupid point. And they'll always point the finger to the guys on gear and say, well, it doesn't matter how they train, doesn't matter what they do because they're on gear, they could do whatever. And it all goes back to there's like one study where they gave guys, I don't know if it was like 6 or 8 or 12 weeks. It was not a long time frame whatsoever. And they showed guys who didn't train at all during this time frame still basically gained as much tissue and strength as the natural athletes who did train. But people take this study and try to apply it to like bodybuilders at the top as if what we saw in that short time frame would continue in the long run, as if is not just this short term effect that you would get from blasting tests when you've never been introduced for it. Like
Right.
they think it's applicable to these situations when it's not. It doesn't matter how much gear you run at a certain point. Right now, obviously, I'm small as fuck, but say even a year ago, right? Like I could have ran all the gear in the world. If I stopped eating and stopped training, I'm still losing size. Like I'm not just going to sit there and grow. So you
No.
have to narrow in on all these little minute details and nail everything if you want to progress once you get to that point.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the overarching theme is like everyone in today's society in many things, they want it as quick as possible and as easy as possible. Not many people want to, when they see something takes a long time to achieve or is going to be really difficult, it's not usually the preferred approach. But with bodybuilding, especially if you're trying to get stage lean or really get to an impressive physique, that I would say is, hey, that's a really impressive physique. They made a crazy transformation. You got to go through that discomfort, whether that's in the off season being a little bit heftier than you want to be, making those sacrifices, not drinking on the weekends at the party or whatever it may look like. You have to be comfortable with things being hard. And when they get hard, look at it as an opportunity. Okay, how many people get to this point and then it's too hard, they stop? Versus they look at it like, this is what I was waiting for. Now let me try. That's how I look. That's my mentality with that aspect. And then in training, sometimes There are sets that we're going to failure, right? Whatever that fucking looks like with the right quality reps. And when it starts to get difficult, cool. Now I'll start counting. Now let's see what we're made of, because that's what's going to really teach you to, again, just live in that discomfort. And that's where the most growth always comes, when people have their back against the wall. What are you going to do? You have to pick a direction. You're either going to quit or you're going to continue. And most people, I think, in the bodybuilding world, because they have this fantasy that it would be nice to be Chris Bumstead, it would be nice to be Ronnie Coleman, it's just not going to be reality. Even if you think you can believe to be that good, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Most people just aren't willing to do what it takes. I think when it comes to really anything, the majority of
No.
things in life, building a business, bodybuilding, trying to pursue other sports, right? When it really comes down to it and shit gets difficult, people will try to justify as to why they can't do it. And it might even be something as simple as, well, I'm not going to get that far. My genetics aren't cut out for it. It's like, motherfucker, how do you don't even know that. Like, you haven't even done this long enough to see what you're
I
actually
think
capable
it's
of.
like a lot of people ask me, what do you think my potential is?
Yeah.
And I don't like that question, because you're asking someone that I don't know you, right? So if I never worked with you before, I never had a conversation past the last 5 minutes with you, why would what I even say matter? Number one, right? I can see why it would matter, but why would you actually think there's any validity behind it? What am I basing it off of? My positive conversation with you? My negative conversation with you? Oh, you look great right now. Hell, you could have been taking every drug to look this good, right? I don't know certain things. So when someone's like, oh, how good can I be? I don't know that answer, and I don't think anyone should ever tell you that answer. How good do you think you can be? Check the boxes for a couple years, don't make the most progress, and you really are training pretty intensity. Your intensity is very good. You don't miss meals. You take some drugs. Yeah, shit, this isn't for you, right? Or sometimes people take supplements and their lab work is really bad, right? Some people just respond very poorly, man. And okay, this isn't for you, because bodybuilding, you're not gonna, your
Mhm.
ceiling has just has really declined here in terms of what you're able to push, because you're going to have health repercussions. And at that point, I think it's a no brainer on the direction you should go. But, that's just something I think is important as well.
Yeah. People ask that question all the time, and they're just looking for validation. And I agree on that point as well, because it's like, well, if I say no, you don't have great potential, are you just gonna not pursue it now because I said that? Is that the defining factor as to how much effort you're gonna put in? Like, that's insane, right? You need to have your own standards, your own belief. Do everything, narrow in for years, preferably work under a coach to make sure you're doing things effectively. And if you have good potential, people will tell you. You won't have to ask anybody.
Right. And that's, again, I'm all about putting your head down, right? Become a master in what your role is in that, on that team or on that assignment. And when it comes to your own endeavors in life, if you want to pursue bodybuilding, have a passion for it. Don't pretend or think because your friends are doing it doesn't mean you have to do it, right? For me, I have my reasons why I got into bodybuilding. I'm sure you do. That's why we're still in it. But you're going to see a lot of people come and go because they're just not passionate about it. And that's the long and the short of it, without all the other things considered.
Yeah. Last thing I want to ask you before we wrap
Right.
this up, is there what would you say is the most valuable lesson you've gathered from coaching? If there's any one that particularly comes to mind, or if there's a few, you know, some things you've noticed with working with so many people over the years.
I hate that you put me on the spot here, because this is a very good question. And if I had some time to think about, I would obviously provide an even better answer. Um, so say it one more time so I can buy time to think about it.
The most valuable lesson you've gathered from coaching, whether it's one or a few that come to mind.
I would say one, you never know what someone's capable of, right? Never judge a book by its cover. The old saying rings true with bodybuilding. I've had clients that, hey, I'll be your best client. I'll do everything. Push comes to shove, they won't be. And then I've had people that I've looked at and kind of scratched my head. Is this person worth my time? Which is why I've changed my ideology on that now. And I don't want to waste your time, because that person was well worth my time. right? They're become a great client. Now they're idol for someone else. So I think that's one valuable lesson. And I'd say the other valuable lesson is you never know someone's like journey and where they've been. So when I talk to someone, maybe they just got into bodybuilding late. Maybe they had a catastrophic disaster in their life, and now they're finding solace in the gym. I want to give that person an opportunity, right? Everyone deserves my time, and they have maybe the question seems silly, but there's a reason they're asking. So I always try to be gentle with things of that nature. My first encounter with someone, and then after that, I've got a good sense of the type of person I might be dealing with. But I don't want to ever overlook someone because I've made that mistake in the past. There's one client specifically we talk about another time. I kind of overlooked that. I shoot him off, and he's very good now, very, very, very good. And in my head, I'm like, damn, why did I do that? That was silly, just dumb of me looking back. There was no reason I should have did that, but I was just naive at the time, you know.
Yeah. So how would you kind of word that for people who are newer to coaching? What would you advice would you pass on to them?
The people you work with, put the time into that you wish we put into you. Don't look for the paycheck. I didn't give a fuck about making money from coaching. I got into coaching and stayed with coaching because I realized the joy I get from helping people. I realized that there's a lot of inept individuals doing this that have no background. I don't care what education they claim to have. You look it up. They didn't actually go to school. They don't actually have any credentials they claim to have. And from there, I think you just have to put your time in. You're not going to be. I'm not. I'm a good coach. I don't say I'm a great coach. Other people will say, "Hey, you're a fucking goat." Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
No, I've done well, but I know I could do better, and better is coming because I know as I get more experience, I start to tap into things that I would overlook. I wouldn't even think of considering. So it's not just there's not formulas for things. You could be doing everything right as a coach, but what's wrong is the person's mindset, right? They're just in a funk, they're in a bad space. Unless you put time into that client, you're not going to know. They're not going to feel comfortable sharing certain things with you. So, again, you're making the right calls on paper. I get coaches all the time that are in like a mentorship program with me. They share their clients' progress. They say, hey, this is what I did, this is the result. Something's wrong. Like, why? Because you did the right thing. You made the right decision. The look is wrong. There's something wrong. Look into it. Ask these questions. Oh, so and so said this happened. How'd you know to ask? I don't know, man. I just, when things are right, there's always something underlying. So by taking the time to put into those clients and not looking at coaching as this lucrative opportunity, which it can be, it's not going to be sustainable. So that is my main thing. The reason I didn't jump to coaching back in 2020 is because is this sustainable? Not because
Yeah.
I'm good enough to capture money. If that was the case, I would have had 10 coaches under me 3 years ago and I would just have this Ponzi scheme. I want to do it the right way.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing for coaches. The most valuable thing is don't try to run a marathon before you're capable of running 1 mile. And it's a long-term game. So you can make a lot of progress in a short amount of time as a coach and as an athlete. But again, we're only as great as our last rendition. So life continues on. You could have had a good showing, but then next year you sucked as a coach. Doesn't now you're not so good anymore. People will remember what happened last. So the same thing with an athlete. You had a couple good weeks. Now you're horrible. Well, what are we going to do from here? So I think that's the main thing to take away from me. But what about you? Like, what do you think is the most from your experience with since you started? I guess like what has been the most valuable thing that you would look back and proclaim was the difference maker, or something that you wish you had known that you didn't going in?
I kind of want to come back to the same point that you said, where it's all about the relationship, right? Not every relationship is going to be the same, and you can't force things out of people. But you always see coaches make these statements where it's like, "I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach," and I don't like those statements because it kind of insinuates, "Don't tell me your problems," right? Like at the same time, you know, don't text me 24/7, yeah, fucking every single thing that's going on in your life. I'm not here to hold your hand every day, every step of the day. But if there's shit going on, I want to know about it. I want to have that trust in the relationship. And that's where really the most growth happens in my experience. And I even got a message right before we started here, uh, which I'll read, not to even plug myself, but what they say, yeah, I've seen the testimonials. They say you help with their lives rather than just with fitness. So it's like being able to have that impact is what I've found the most fulfillment in. So looking back, I guess that's when I started. I didn't really expect that to happen, right? Which it kind of all comes for full circle because I didn't really start coaching for that aspect, but I almost started posting content for that aspect, right? Because when I was younger, I was always just in a very bad place, and I would watch people like Greg Plitt and be like, I want to be able to have this impact on people where I could just drive them and have make a difference within their lives. And I'm thankful that I've been able to do that through coaching, but I didn't really know that was capable just through coaching at first. I thought coaching was more so just you write the plans, you get the protocols, you do the equations, and you help people make physical progress. But as I got more into it, I realized that it was really just about the relationships and really being able to understand people mentally. Again, not everybody's going to require all this. Some people just, you say something 10-4 and they're just on it no matter what. And they're robotic. And, I guess some people don't have a lot of issues, and that's great. But a lot of people do have a lot of issues. And when you're able to help people work through that and grow mentally, it always translates to the progress that they'll see. But it's just, you're able to have that impact, right? So I guess if I would have known that from the start, I don't know if that would have deterred me, because I would have at that point thought, oh, this is going to be more work. But at the same time, I would have also understood that there's a lot more to be gained from this.
No, for sure. And I think, again, when the people that look at this as just an opportunity to grab money, that's exactly what it will be. And as quickly as the opportunity comes, as quickly as it will go, and you'll be left looking for something else. On the flip side, when you do it the right way, let's just say you do read some books. There's certain books I recommend that people read before getting into coaching. Take the mentorship class, right? Practice with people for free, potentially. Apply those aspects and learn. Make mistakes. That's where you're going to learn. You don't make the same mistake twice, because then I'd say, that's an error. But you just have to be patient, build those relationships with the people. And the reason I feel I have so many opportunities now and I've got to where I've gotten to is because I actually put the time into people. I'm wise with who I choose to put time into because I deemed it worthwhile for my own personal satisfaction and enjoyment of what could be. So now when people win their pro card and stuff, like, that's great. But for me, what was more enjoyable was the journey getting there, right? Because now we're at a peak, and that doesn't mean there's a decline. There's another mountain to climb. So I'm already overlooking this. Like, coach, I'm so happy I won. Well, that was the goal here, right? When we signed up, we said, hey, next time I step on stage, I want to win. So in my head, I wasn't putting you on stage to lose. So that's not what I find fulfilling. What I find fulfilling is raising the bar where you wanted to be a year ago. Okay, well, now we're there. Now where are we going next? And looking forward like that. And for most of us, at least a lot of my coaching now, when I don't have, because again, I have people that are very high level. I have people that are like social media gurus, I call them, like top level influencers. And then I have the average Joe, I guess you could say. At some point, the bodybuilding is just a chapter, right? And eventually we got to end that chapter and start a new one. I like to prepare people to be in the best position possible from a physical standpoint, mental standpoint, overall health, and what they can take from this journey in their bodybuilding career to apply it into the next chapter of life. That is what's most important, right? So when they can look back and say, hey, I was in the best shape of my life at this time, and I was also actually able to start a business, and I started a family. Fucking awesome, right? That to me is like full circle and what I find the most enjoyment in. But again, if you're just in it to make money and you look at it as like a job, that's what it's going to be. If you want to make it a career, you need to invest in people. You need to have a niche that you go after, bring value to someone other than just, here's a diet, here's some training, check in next week. It's not going to work very well, especially today. It's very saturated, the industry now, and you have many different schools of thought, it seems, right, with how to go about it. So I think results speak for themselves. And if you have the proper educational background and you've used yourself as your own billboard, you can say, hey, this is where I was, this is where I am. In your case, you can now come back from an injury. Those are all things that are going to be able to apply to people that you never even met yet, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all the shit that I've gone through the past year. I mean, I have my shoulder issue, my back surgery. Um, I've had to do so much or learn so much in that process as to how to recover that, how to address these issues, how to, improve mobility and just things that I would never fucking do before. I would never think to program these things for people, or I see things in people that I can now recognize because I saw it in myself. So there have been a lot of upsides to it. Helped me become a better coach ultimately. I've just become much more aware of the importance of things and being able to analyze things and see things I wouldn't before.
For sure. No. And I think wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. So I just say in conclusion for any coach or any athlete that watches this and supports the channel and the other guests that you have on, other than myself, which makes frequent appearances probably too many for people to desire. Um, I think focus on inaction. And what I mean by that, I think the most important commodity in life is inaction, it's not time. And the reason it's inaction is time is going to pass no matter what. We've been on doing this podcast. Now people are listening. If they got to this point, you just wasted an hour of your life potentially. What did you do while you're doing this? Maybe you did cardio. Maybe you prepped your meals. Maybe you just were deep. This is your therapy before bed. But inaction, what are you doing with your time? So if you're focusing on this bodybuilding chapter, be the best you can be. Don't look back and have these regrets because time is going to pass no matter what, right? It's already Tuesday. It's already in November, man. The end of the year is going to be here. What can you accomplish with the next 36 days that are remaining in 2024? That is where you're going to find the most value. And bodybuilding isn't the longest chapter in life. There's outside of bodybuilding, there's a lot lengthier things.
Yeah. Well, most people know what they need to do. They just don't take the action. It's something that I usually tell most of my guys is if you just envision who you want to be, think of your ideal life. You want to be IFBB pro competing in the Olympia. You want to have a successful coaching business. Think of that person and what would that person be doing right now? Like what needs to be done. You just need to take that perspective and think, okay, well, I want to have a fucking $500,000 a year income running a coaching business. Why am I sitting here playing the Xbox? This is what benefit does this have to me right now? And people want to try to like justify things, have balance, whatever. I mean, that's a whole different discussion, but you know what you need to do.
Right.
But all right. Actually, no. I want to ask you about Nick. How's it been like working with Nick so far?
Terrific, man. He is the epitome of what I wish every client could be like. He's like a robot. So you just got to program the robot the correct way. And outside of that, again, he's a human being. So not to demonize him in any way. I think he's a terrific client. He listens. He does everything. I mean, the main thing for me going into coaching him, friendship aside, this is like business now, right? Because this is a risk that I don't need to take. And the risk to you as well, right? Because now you only have so many years left. You lost 2 years now competing in the Olympia. Some people can never get there once, yet alone be there for a couple of years. But it doesn't last long, right? We're getting older. That's the reality. We look back on conversations. If you ask me when I coach, yeah, long enough ago, man, to where I'm thankful for where I am, but at the same time, how'd it go by so fast? So
Yeah.
with Nick, my main thing was you got to be a student again, right? You need to invest, and if I'm asking you to do something, do it. I don't really give a fuck what you were doing in the past to a degree because it didn't work. It didn't get you to where you need to be because you wouldn't be talking to me today if it did. So that's my take on it. And he just executes. So just think of I'm sure you have clients that are very, very good. Couple that with very good genetics and knows how to train, right? We're not doing this science-based shit, right? There's a reason, there's a method to the madness, right? So he uses the RP Strength app. I don't know if you ever had a chance to use it, but when you know how to train, something like that is helpful. You don't know how to train, nothing's going to help you in life, not even me or you.
Yeah. He's the first client you've had at that level within bodybuilding? Open?
Top three in the world, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been my first one, yeah. So
But I was in terms of like sheer size at that just level of massive bodybuilder.
well, I was big, okay.
Okay.
But yeah, no, for sure. I mean, someone that size, yeah, man. I mean, it's definitely so part of it's a learning experience, right? To see how quickly things work. And it's just like, oh, okay, cool. Like you can handle this amount of food, or this is what we need to do. So it's that aspect is a learning curve. But as far as everything else, everything I'm preaching here in terms of like putting the time in and understanding someone, that's where there's the values really added. And I think Connie Rumbod, I don't know if it was on a podcast, but he said psychologically is where he thinks he was superior to many coaches. Because at the end of the day, bodybuilding is bodybuilding. Nick is going to train, Nick's going to get a diet from anyone. Doing the right things with the diet, keeping him healthy and putting him in a spot to where we're ready to prep, right? We regained our size. We're in a healthy state. A healthy body is a responsive body. Now we know what we need to do. Everything is working on the right timeline. So that's been like the coolest aspect of coaching is to see someone at that level. And now I have the opportunity because a lot of people view me as just like the influencer coach, right? At least
Yeah.
we have, again, the hardcore bodybuilding world where I don't really even dabble with. I've came up in it, but like there are certain people that are, you only can use these coaches. You know, Chris Aceto, Boss of Outlaw is really popular now. But you
It's a
have
good
that
one.
high level of bodybuilding is a different level of coaches, right? So they don't even know anything about the studies you're talking about because their algorithms are so programmed for other shit. So tapping into that, I'm a foreigner to them. They're like, "What the fuck is Nick doing?" But now I'm here to say, listen, like you'll see, I can do it. Whether I choose to do it in the future, that's a different story, right? But that's where I plan on positioning myself is to have the ability to, hey, I can coach any of your athletes all better than you can, but my hands are off, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, just establish yourself, send the message. But yeah, I mean Hani, that's was Hani's whole thing, right? I don't think he's doing anything drastically different. I mean, obviously he has his methods, but the biggest ideology behind his coaching is really the relationship. The it's how he can, you know, get into people's how we can have that psychological relationship, I guess, for a lack of a better term. But
Yeah,
obviously, as you see how that's played out, it's not just, you know, obviously there's luck involved in everything, but that obviously plays a huge, massive factor.
for sure. And the desire when you have someone, I guess going back, not to make this longer, but another valuable thing I learned, referrals and word of mouth are your most powerful source of advertising,
Yeah.
right? So you know my Instagram. That's the only platform I have. I don't even use it. I
Hmm.
rarely post. I probably posted 7 times this entire year, right?
Hmm.
So I have more inquiries a day than I think most people probably get in months. But all of that was built on how I've established myself in coaching, right? So when people are just looking for that quick money grab and their turnover is really high, that's not going to be helpful. You want to make those meaningful impacts. So yeah, maybe you don't have as many clients as you want, or you're not charging top dollar, but people realize like, holy shit, this compared to something else is night and day. That's what I think is most important. It just takes a lot of time. Just declining this call. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You just got to play the long game. A lot of people just want everybody has short term satisfaction with everything. And that's how you burn yourself out very quickly. You will not build a
No
sustainable
steps in
career.
life, man. The journey of 1,000 steps starts with a single one. You can't hop to the end, unfortunately.
That's a good quote. But all right, you got anything else? Anything you want to plug before we wrap it up?
No, man. Plug. I appreciate people that support the channel, and I hope it continues to grow, and you can bring on cool guests like myself in the future. That'll be the goal.
Okay, yeah. Well, maybe we'll get you on again if we're lucky.
I think you'll be lucky, but no. Other than that, I hope everyone. I don't know when this is going to come out, but I hope everyone has a good holiday and enjoys time being present, stays off the phone. So hopefully, you're not watching this at Thanksgiving dinner or anything like that. That would be my
Enjoy your Thanksgiving.
yeah. Be present in the moment. We don't get enough of them.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Kyle.
Pleasure as always, Sebastian.
We'll see you on the next episode of Brass Tack Bodybuilding.